They say that sometimes a change is as good as a rest, and these scenes are gonna test that theory. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for Trek Culture, and here are 10 Star Trek reshoots that totally changed the ending. Number 10. Star Trek Insurrection, explosive ending. Star Trek Insurrection is nowhere near as bad as its reputation would have you believe. For example, while it's often criticised as being an overlong episode of The Next Generation, it's also a comment on the aging cast, the pursuit of unattainable goals, and also offers a scene-stealing performance from F. Murray Abraham. It's Abraham's Ruafo who suffers the most from the reshoots in the film. Originally, his villain would have been confronted by Picard on the Collector, the massive device used to harness the fountain of youth energy from the Baku planet's rings. However, in traditional Starfleet style, Picard would offer the hand of friendship only to be turned away. Ruafo would then ascend into the ring's radiation, finally achieving the youth he so desired before dying. This entire sequence was reshot. In the final version, Picard sets the Collector to self-destruct, watch on as Ruafo is consumed by the flames, disappearing in a transporter beam. It is a far colder ending to the film, despite the fire, which is at odds with the tone of the film overall. The original ending is far stronger, with the film ending up a little bit weaker due to its removal. Number 9. Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan, Casket and Monologue. Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan famously features the death of beloved fan favourite character Spock. Spoiler, I guess. This plot element had been leaked before the film's release, garnering a negative reaction. However, audiences weren't to know that decisions on the finality of this death had already been made behind the scenes. Leonard Nimoy, despite initially requesting the death, changed his mind, and this led to the inclusion of the remember moment with McCoy. However, that wasn't enough for test audiences. They considered the film's ending to be too dark, despite the hopeful tone of Kirk stating he felt young again by the story's close. Harv Bennett listened, returning then to shoot 2 additional scenes. This included the reveal of Spock's casket on the Genesis planet and a final monologue delivered by Nimoy. The famous "Space, the Final Frontier" lines play out before the closing credits. Combined, these elements effectively guaranteed a return for Spock, thereby ensuring a sequel was on the way. Director Nicholas Meyer was not a fan of these additions at all, but allowed them, believing the film strong enough to withstand them. Number 8. Star Trek Voyager Favourite Son, More Ceremony. Favourite Son is a 3rd season episode of Star Trek Voyager that underwent reshoots during filming. Garrett Wang is front and centre here, as Harry Kim is identified as alien rather than the human male he had always believed himself to be. While it all turns out to be a plot by the Teresians, this brings Voyager to this planet of vampire ladies. Roughly midway through the episode, a ceremonial wedding takes place. As originally filmed, it was a racier affair, which was a bit of a clue toward the episode's ending. Notably, the idea that Kim was only there to have his life force sucked out of him was teased by the way the women in the scene treated the unfortunate man getting married. This was retooled after the dailies came in, and the scene was reshot to make their intentions more ambiguous. It became a scene that was more ceremonial and slightly deeper, with dozens of candles added along with more solemnity. This both made the ending of the episode more of a twist, though also teased that these people needed more than just blood to survive. While the episode was still received poorly, the reshoots certainly went a distance toward making it stronger overall. Number 7. Star Trek Beyond, Commodore Paris. Shura Agadashlu, who is of course now best known for her stellar performance in The Expanse, was added to Star Trek Beyond late in the day. Her scenes as Commodore Paris were slotted into the script almost 5 months after principal photography had wrapped, adding a storyline that saw Captain Kirk seeking a promotion. Without these scenes, Beyond stood as a film that saw the crew of the Enterprise facing another dastardly threat, but without anything particularly extra to it. Kirk simply did the hero's job and went back to work on the Enterprise A at the end of the story. The opening monologue, which saw the man dealing with the monotonous nature of their missions, loses some of its impact. Adding these scenes offered a bit more weight to his journey. Knowing that he was actively seeking reassignment puts a clock over the adventures on the ship without a guarantee that he would be returning for a 4th story. However, by the end of the movie, he turns down the promotion that Paris offers him, a decision she supports entirely. This means that, quite apart from Kirk simply hopping back onto the bridge, his position was clearly understood by his superiors. He had once again proven himself as a captain, and the door was still open to moving up in rank when the time came. Number 6. Star Trek Voyager Caretaker, Bye Bye Bujold. Caretaker features some of the most extensive reshoots in all of Star Trek, which is an achievement considering there were only a few short weeks to master them. The resulting reshoots changed not only the ending of this episode, but the fate of Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Picard, and Star Trek Prodigy. When Genevieve Bujold was cast as Captain Janeway, the producers went straight into filming. She, along with Robert Duncan McNeill and Garrett Wang, began filming much of the pilot early. Though the scenes were solid, Bujold abruptly quit after 2 days. With their lead actress departed, the producers scrambled to find their Janeway. Kate Mulgrew was found, and Star Trek history was made. There is no way to overstate the importance of Mulgrew filming her scenes as Star Trek's first leading female captain. Janeway's speech at the end of Caretaker, describing their new search to get home, is quintessential Voyager and could only have been delivered by Mulgrew. Janeway's relationship with Seven was based on both Mulgrew and Jerry Ryan's contentious but professional relationship off-screen, which leads into Seven's appearance on Star Trek Picard as well. Finally, Star Trek Prodigy features the return of Mulgrew with that voice, welcoming Trekkies of all ages home to the franchise. All of this from reshooting 2 days worth of footage almost 30 years earlier. Number 5. Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, No More Rockmen. The climactic battle with God in Star Trek V: The Final Frontier originally included several rock henchmen that Kirk, Spock and McCoy would have to fight to escape. These were bulky characters resembling the Excalbians from the Savage Curtain who would become an imposing threat to overcome. They were, in a word, ridiculous. The budget on the film simply didn't stretch to a believable costume, which looked exactly what it was. Styrofoam and rubber suits with cigarette smoke pumped inside to give them a steaming quality. Had they remained in the film, they would have given the impression of a 60s Batman flavour of villain. They were cut all together and the scenes with God were reshot and re-edited. With the Rockmen removed, the climax becomes Kirk, Spock, McCoy and Cybok facing off against George Murdoch's ethereal starship-seeking baddie, followed by its destruction thanks to the timely intervention of a Klingon bird of prey. Star Trek V is never going to reach any fan's top 3 Star Trek films list, yet it does have its charms, not least for the fact that it looks like it was made on a wing and a prayer, but there's also the, well, it's better than it could have been element to it as well. Number 4. Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Facets. Brooks is too creepy. The 3rd season episode of Deep Space Nine, Facets, sees Jadzia Dax recruit her friends to act as temporary hosts for the previous incarnations of the Dax symbiont. While most of these lead directly into comedy, there is one host who is about as far away from comedy as it's possible to get. Commander Sisko takes on the guise of Duran Dax, the unstable murderer who had been hidden from Jadzia's memories previously. Though confined to a holding cell for everyone's protection, Duran proves adept enough at psychological intimidation that the force field barely stops him. Avery Brooks took the brief, crazy guy is mean, and ran with it. His first delivery was deemed to be far too creepy by the producers, who felt that the episode's ending would taint the way audiences perceived the man. The dialogue was strong enough without adding the psychotic element, so they elected to reshoot these scenes. Brooks was instructed to dial back his performance, who was then able to deliver the scenes that ultimately ended up in the episode. This, combined with Sisko and Dax's small laugh at the end, allowed the two of them to go on being friends by the end, and ultimately wiped away the fears that an unsympathetic character would be left in charge of the station. Number 3. Star Trek The Motion Picture, Spock's Spacewalk. In Star Trek The Motion Picture, Spock arrives on the Enterprise having attempted the Kolinar ceremony. This is aimed at purging all emotion, though the vast consciousness of Voyager overcomes him, leading him to leave Vulcan and return to service. For much of the film's runtime, Spock is cold and distant to his crewmates. This changes after his spacewalk scene, wherein he encounters the heart of Voyager. The original version of the scene paints Voyager in a far more villainous light than the audience actually received in the final ending. Kirk, fearing for his friend, follows him out, only to be attacked by the various elements of Voyager's sensor probes. This version of the scene was deemed problematic, and it was reshot to what finally appears in the film. This then serves the dual purpose of helping the film's pacing and removing some of Voyager's villainy. Subsequently, the finale, which sees Voyager merge with Decker, becomes a more wondrous moment, the two beings evolving together, than a human triumph over a cold machine, and the film is far better for it. Number 2. Star Trek The Next Generation, The Most Toys, A New Fajo. British actor David Rappaport had been cast as Kivas Fajo in Star Trek The Next Generation episode The Most Toys. Rappaport had a smaller stature than many of the other actors in the episode, which had inspired director Timothy Bond to consider building smaller scale sets for his ship, the Jovis. This would have given him the sense of a kind of bullying power, as all the characters around him would have to stoop. However, after filming had commenced, but before these sets were built, Rappaport attempted to die by suicide. It was clear that he couldn't continue filming, so the role was recast. Bond's friend Saul Rubinek was quickly cast in the part, mostly as a favour. This eliminated the need for smaller sets, as he was closer in height to Brent Spiner. It also inspired a further change in the character, leading to the infamous final scene. While Rappaport carried his weapon constantly in the earlier scenes, Rubinek's Fajo was depicted as less trigger-happy. This made the brutal murder of Varia all the more shocking, leading directly to Data's decision to fire at him. Though the reshoots were necessitated by tragic circumstances, they had an undeniably positive effect on the ending overall. Number 1. Star Trek Generations, Kirk's death. When Star Trek Generations was first filming, the ending that was planned was quite different from the one that audiences eventually saw in the theatre. Most of the elements were the same. Kirk returns from the Nexus to help Picard battle Sauron, but the outcome of the fight changed. Rather than fall down the mountainside on the bridge, Kirk was shot in the back by Sauron. This ending, while securing Sauron's villainary status, didn't sit well with test audiences. There was something in the fact that the great Captain Kirk was more obviously murdered by the mad scientist that made it a more bitter pill to swallow. This feedback was taken on board and the ending was reshot. Now, Kirk was simply on board the rickety bridge, which finally collapsed, sending the man plummeting to his death at the bottom of a ravine. While this allowed for the brief but beautiful moment between Kirk and Picard, it was still a little underwhelming for audiences. Time has been kind to Generations, which has received something of a reappraisal in recent years. Still, when all is said and done, that scene of Picard building a cairn for his predecessor packs a punch to this day. That's everything for our list today, guys. If you reckon I missed anything, drop it into the comments below. Let us know what you thought of the video. Remember, you can catch us over on Twitter at Trek Culture. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick as well. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Every time you do that, you help this channel grow because you are legends. You look after yourselves, you look after your friends and family. Until I see you again, make sure that you live long and prosper. And thanks very much. Bye.